Okay, you can hear me now.
Now.
Yes, okay, there we go.
There we go.
Uh,
All right, 3, 2, 1, and we're in. Go
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. My name is Jordan with the silent PH in the middle, and I'm joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Illusion. Good morning, sir. Sorry for the audio delays. Right before we went live, it was like 30 seconds. I'm like, I bet my audio's not working. So...
Gotta stop changing those settings. That's the problem.
Well, I had to. That was the other problem. Lucian is very low. Let me see if I can kick him up. Go ahead and talk, Lucian.
How about now, everybody? I'm not
Still
too close to my mic.
low.
That might be a little different. Looks pretty good on my side. No, I guess I am low on my side, too.
Do you want to increase your gain and then I don't have to up it?
Yeah, let me go into properties. Nope. Let's look around. So go ahead. I will up mine while you're speaking.
Fantastic.
What I did is I had taken my computer outside because I wanted to get all the dust out of it, so I had to unplug everything. So you know when you plug stuff back in and you have 9 different USB items, but you don't put them back in the same place, it messes with your settings. So that's where the different problems happen. Okay, here's volume. So let's
Okay, talk one more time.
How about now?
Pretty better.
Pretty better? I can go a couple
Well,
more
it's
notches.
good for me, but it's not good for you, for the audience, I think.
That's weird.
There we go. Now you're in the yellow.
Now we got it.
Now that's what we like.
We figured it out. This is also the Saturday morning troubleshooting audio show. So if you've never had to troubleshoot that, welcome.
Yeah. Yep. Oh,
the kid coming?
I don't think
We have
so.
special
Goodbye.
guests?
Have
Oh,
fun.
see ya.
I think they're going on a trip to
Okay.
Target this morning.
Oh.
So.
Almost had a special guest.
Almost had a special guest. Oliver was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm going to do my show." And he's like, "Well, what is that?" And I'm like, "Well, that's where I talk to those people. You remember their faces on the screen?" And he's like, "Well, I want to talk to people." And I was like, "Well, then come on down in a little bit." But he got distracted by breakfast. So, sorry for the audio issues, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for understanding. Yeah, I had to, because of Great Mode Run March. I originally was recording audio using OBS, but OBS can't record just audio. So I was recording like a 4-hour video just to get the audio, and it was absurd and dumb. So because of that, I reinstalled Voicemeeter Banana, which has been causing all of the problems that I had originally, and got rid of Voicemeter Banana so that I wouldn't have these problems every time I start OBS. But now I'm just going to have to double check everything again because I need it in order to record 2 audio streams onto the same track. I hate audio.
Sense.
Like, it's funny how audio is probably
Multi-source audio.
more important than video in
Yes.
in just about everything, because you got to be able to hear people. But it is the most difficult for me personally to figure out. So
We are mid-September. Does that mean the boy already has a costume for Halloween?
You know, we're trying to figure that out. We normally are very good about creating excessive amounts of Halloween costumes. But this year we haven't been able to think of anything. he doesn't quite understand Halloween. So we asked him, like, well, hey, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, I want to be Oliver. And I'm like, well, you could do that. We were toying with the idea of him being me being Mom, and Mom being Oliver. I thought that would be kind of funny. But he didn't really understand. He was like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So I'll let you know. Yeah, we'll try to get a picture or something up. We want to do some kind of a themed trick-or-treat costume, but we'll see what we come up with.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're getting to that time. September, moving into the fall season of game playing, where people maybe start to head indoors a little bit more. At least it is here for us in the north.
It finally just cooled off. Like, we were able to go outside.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's no longer hundreds of degrees outside. Heat
but
waves
it is cooling off for sure. Yeah. Hi, Chili Dog.
Leaves are falling on the yard.
Not quite yet, but you know.
All right.
Which also means end of the year Kickstarters are happening, which we'll talk
right.
about then, because a lot of I feel like a lot of Kickstarters are just like, we got to get it done before the end of the fiscal year or something, and so lots of Q4 money buying or Kickstarters finishing so that they can spend all of that money before they have to pay taxes on it by the end of the year. So it's kind of interesting. It's interesting now running a YouTube business. I'm noticing a lot more of that kind of stuff where I kind of wish I wasn't noticing it, but yeah, you're like, oh no, we got to get this now so that I can spend it all. And then it's like part of a business expense.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, interesting. For those of you just starting, well, you probably are not listening anymore because you're like, what? There's no audio. But we're a D&D tabletop role-playing kind of podcast. We just talk about news and things going on in the world of tabletop games. And quickly, I wanted to touch on this just because it was in the news, but it seems like a real weird, frivolous thing. Back in the day, well, not back in the day, a little while ago, there was a company that started calling themselves TSR, and they were trying to usurp D&D, and I'll use that word, usurp. They were really weird about it, and they were starting a new game. And they were very like anti-woke culture and all this other stuff, and it was just kind of they were just weird. And one of them was a relative of the original Gary Gygax, like one of the sons or something, but not
Luke.
Not Luke Gygax.
Right.
It was
Luke's
like Ernie Gygax or something, and but like Gary Gygax's wife controls the thing, and she sold it all, and so there was a weird thing, but he's like, well, we're gonna reclaim it, we're gonna do all this stuff. They kind of started calling them New TSR. That's NU TSR. Well, Wizards of the Coast filed a lawsuit against them because they were on the basis that they're trying to destroy the Wizards of the Coast D&D reputation. And some really weird, like, racist stuff was coming out of the woodwork that New TSR was trying to publish a very racist kind of, like, game and have it under the guise of, like, hey, it's D&D. And so the whole thing seems very, like, I don't think you would have actually published this. I think it was all a stage. This is Jordan's thinking, that it was a staged thing to try and ruin their reputation, but it's caused Wizards of the Coast to actually file a lawsuit to stop them from doing this, which is probably what they wanted. I don't really know. Ted's following it a little bit on Nerdiversion's channel, but I think it's also one of those nobody really wants to care about this. Like, we're giving them attention when we shouldn't be giving them attention, kind of a thing. So, but it is in the nudes. It's kind of floating around. But moving on, I noticed that the internet is blowing up about Critical Role. Do you know what happened on Critical Role? Can we talk about what happened on Critical Role? Because I haven't been listening.
Yes, spoilers or whatever. What I started noticing is all of a sudden the reaction videos, which you all know how much we love that. Maybe they don't. Maybe we only talked about that off camera. But I started noticing, like, on Tuesday and Wednesday, all these people putting up videos on Critical Role on their channels about their reaction to episode 33. And I hadn't been following it in I think the last episode I might have watched was early episodes, like maybe 10 or 11, somewhere in there, and then I kind of fell off. But Danimal, our dungeon master, usually keeps up with it quite a bit. And I'm not spoiling because I don't know exactly what happened. But I feel like what's happened is in episode 33, they're in a combat where some players have gone down. Maybe some have failed some death saves to the point that they're dead unless something else happens in the world or the group is able to go out of it. And then at the end of that, I feel like they weren't done with the combat. So it was like this ending of a session, which happens to all dungeon masters sometimes, where you have a nice big combat going on, things are starting to take a decline, but you're running out of time, so you're gonna have to come back next week to figure out how this all wraps itself up. And that would have been on Thursday, but I haven't heard anything about what happened on Thursday, so I don't know if the crew of Critical Role has been able to turn it around and miraculously save everybody, or I can't imagine that it's been a total group wipe. But I think what had made it popular and what made it all of a sudden everybody was talking about it was the idea that it could possibly be a TPK. So what I thought was more interesting is not to go with spoilers, because I don't know actually what's going on in that storyline at the moment, but I thought it was a cool topic to think about from the standpoint of these live play games. How popular would that series get all of a sudden if we hit a TPK 33 episodes in this season? Wouldn't that bring a lot of people back to go back and, oh my God, what happened? And go watch, episodes 32 and 33 to lead up, see the TPK, and then maybe follow it another episode or two, because you just don't see that in Dungeons and Dragons 5e very much anymore. I don't hear of a lot of total group wipes,
Well, and I will say, like, TPKs are more difficult in 5e, I feel. But you're absolutely right. Like, I wonder, I can't imagine the brand like that they're gonna be okay with a TPK, because it's like we've got shirts for characters, we've got this, like.
So do you stop it as the dungeon master and running that company?
I would look. I mean, financially, you do stop it 100%. Yeah, you're just like you don't kill Dritz to Erden without a way of bringing him back,
because the dice rolled a 1 instead of a 2.
Yeah, exactly. But that's also D&D.
That's D&D.
And like, if your brand is role-playing games and D&D, like that's D&D. Yeah. Death happens. I could see them killing one character. Matt seems like he'd probably be like, well, it's a lethal game, guys. You made a bad decision. But
would he kill the
can't
whole
see the whole party. I definitely think they would wake up in a... they'd wake up in the afterlife and have to like travel back and find their bodies or something, and it would be a whole adventure. Or they would wake up in a prison, and it's like, oh, we brought you back, like you were just knocked out.
Yeah. And one thing,
and he
I
did
think
kill
that
one Molly Mock or whatever. That character did die. I should say that. Yeah. So
characters have died on the show, and that was kind of where I was going to go with that next kind of comment, was the idea that we have seen how they handle character deaths, and from what we know in the background, or what I have heard, I believe, and maybe this is wrong, is that typically when that happens after the session, Matt meets with the player typically and really just asks, "What are you thinking? Do you want to bring this character back?" And then we'll just, there's all kinds of story, there's all kinds of ways in the game that are possible to bring a character back. It's not impossible to go and get resurrected or revivified or have some high-level NPC help you out, or, pray to the gods, whatever it might be. So if the player's really set on, no, I'm really digging this, it'd be cool if I could come back and we could work it into the story somehow. Perfect. But that player also could say, no, this is great. That was the best ending. That was the best death they could have. That was the arc I really wanted. I think I'm going to bring another character in, which is kind of what happened in the last season. And we're going to go from there. And lots of people love that character too, right? So they could go both ways, and they talk it out and they figure it out. But a group is all of a sudden, if the whole group goes down and they're in the middle of that campaign.
That's a TPK. That's usually like adventure over. Like,
do you bring them together and you say, okay, guys, the dice went against us. You guys failed, you did the wrong thing, or you made the wrong choices, or just most of the time it's just the dice. The group's wiped out. Do we have a high-level NPC come in and do something? Or are you guys set on, no, we're going to all make new characters? It'd be like, what would happen? So that just seems like almost, I think of it as almost like the Kobayashi Maru kind of thing. It's like a hard place that it's not winnable. Like, you can't not do it because there's just so many people making artwork, and there's so much, like you said, merchandising going on. And there's so many story arcs that Matt has already worked on, technically, probably, set stuff out. Maybe things are being built to further the storyline, to then all of a sudden just, boom, wipe out, you know? But I think it's interesting that it's a different discussion when you're talking about a live play show and a company that's based around it versus me or Jordan running our games and our party wipes. We're not having the same kind of thoughts. You know, we're not having to go as deep into it as they are because it's a multi-million-dollar business for them, which is very different than us playing with our friends on a Tuesday night and, oh, everybody died. All right, cool. New campaign. Here we go.
Yeah,
you know,
you
like
might have players upset that everybody died, but and I'll still have that conversation. Like my Ghost of Saltmarsh TPK was very much like, well, what do you guys want to do? And everyone was like, I think we just start a new game. And I'm like, okay, we did.
Here we go.
So, but, you know, we were even talking about it would have been cool in Ghosts of Saltmarsh if they play the ancestors, like, and then it's like, you know, 60 years in the future and the world is now run by Sahagwin, you know. And so you could map it, but boy, as a dungeon master, I would hate to have this entire thing set up to do a whole character arc for all of these people, and it's like, well, that's all gone now because they all died. But
right. I thought one of the ways I was going to handle it in my Storm King's Thunder game, if the whole group had went down, was the idea that they would get to play the characters that were going to go through a mini adventure to perform a ritual to bring heroes back to fight the great evil that they have to fight. So like a high level person comes in and says, you know, kind of like the Doctor Strange, I've looked at 7 million possibilities, and if these people don't do the thing they're supposed to do, the world ends. So I need your group of people to get them back. How are you going to do that? Well, we've got time travel. We've got, let's go down to the plains of hell and grab them. You know, there's like all kinds of ways you could run that. And so they would get a chance to play other characters that have a mission to bring their normal characters back because it's imperative. And then when that's done, it's a nice little interlude and we can go back to those characters and say, okay, here we go. You're back and you're going back after the great big bad guy again.
Yeah,
so
I think there was a game out there where you play the familiars, like of wizards and stuff. Cool. And it's the same thing where it's like they're all trapped somewhere and you get to do a side mission as like a cat to save your master or your
Tomb of Annihilation would be great. You have to go down and get the souls that have been trapped by a Sararak.
Yeah.
And that's your mission. You have to go get those souls.
Yeah.
That'd be really fun and cool. So I thought that was interesting. So that was the big thing that I saw out there in Critical Role. I've only watched a little bit here and there. They've got some interesting characters. I haven't latched on as much to the characters they're playing this year as I have in previous. Which is weird because normally they make really good, interesting characters, I think. But this time I didn't really grab on any that I thought, ooh, I really want to watch and see where this one goes. So
the only
I've
one
kind
I
of
really
bounced
know
off
is
this
the
one.
robot is fresh cut grass, but
yeah, and it's probably just because it's a weird name.
Yeah,
right?
and I honestly and the art and stuff it just looked cool, but I don't know the characters as well. Oh, I guess Marish is playing like a really kind of creepy warlock character. So that's fun.
Yeah.
So maybe I know more than I think.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I thought it was notable because I saw it out there a lot. Critical Role is definitely still a big juggernaut in the role playing space, and you know when they're doing stuff that kind of reverberates around. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But I think that's what. So I don't know what happened on episode 34, which I think would have been this Thursday. It doesn't release. I couldn't go back and watch the VOD because I don't think they release their VODs for people who watch it live till Monday for some reason, which I've never quite understood.
It's to up the live hype, I think, to watch it live. It's kind of, I mean, I released this podcast on Monday, but it also gives me time to like edit it and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but you don't have a staff of people and millions.
No, you're right.
And I can't imagine anybody makes a decision that says, oh, I can't wait till Monday. I have to be able to watch it on Saturday, Sunday. So nope, I guess I'm just going to stay up all Thursday night and watch it. Because
you're not a true fan then. Yeah,
I can't see that logic working.
Well, and Pacific Coasters are probably a lot easier to watch it than East Coasters.
There you go. Yeah, so, it's super late for us. So
I feel bad because I'm running Great Motor on March and all of my players are East Coast except me. And so we finish and it's like 9:30. I'm like, yeah, that was great. It's like pushing midnight for them. I'm like, oh, sorry.
We're tired. We got a work night. So very cool. I did also see another great video, though I did definitely want to talk about. We mentioned it a little bit in our chat. Was Matt Colville put out a great video about introducing world lore and your campaign setting to your players, and he gave really good examples, I thought, of when he tried it and he failed, and when he tried it and he thought it was working and it did much better. And there's that beautiful, beautiful clip that he shows of him having a one-off session with Dale. And
so good. I'm so happy you said that.
I was like, that's the quintessential clip. You show somebody that's what D&D is about. That's what you're trying to achieve. That's what you're trying to get. You're trying to get this cool moment you're setting up as a dungeon master, and your player is so into it. They're making all kinds of weird faces. They're you can see like balloons popping off as ideas are going, what, all that kind of stuff, and that surprise, because that'll be something they just remember and talk about forever.
Oh yeah,
those are the moments you're trying to build.
And in that video, he talks about having like a magic item that can give information, like the crystal hand. I'll give you more information if I have more. If you fix me, if you give me more parts, more fingers. Yep. Which is cool. Funny that it really is serendipitous, maybe coincidental that I was watching that, but I'm also reading up for my Great Modron March game. There is a magic item in that game that's a skull that has information magically stored in it, and you can ask the skull specific questions about the planes, and it will answer. But it can be affected by certain spells or anti-magic zones, so it can give you like gobbledygook. And the original game came with a CD that had tracks of information. So when the players would ask the right question, you could play the CD track. And I'm gonna look for it. I'm gonna see if I can find an MP3 of it somewhere, or maybe it's on YouTube, and then I can get those actual track files. And it would be fun to introduce this and then play it for my group. Is my goal. Yeah, so
that'd be very cool. So I just love that idea. It's over on Matt Colville's channel. He always puts out really good dungeon mastering tip videos and such. He also mentioned at the very end of that video that they had a lot of, or maybe not a lot of, but they had extra minis from their campaigns.
Yeah,
a couple of campaigns that have completed. So if instead of them trying to store them and just keep them, they're just like, advertising that you guys can go.
Well, they're finally available for purchase, I think, is the big thing.
So you can just go
and a lot of them are the Beast Heart companions. And I don't know if I want a $35 mini, but I think I'm going to buy the, specifically I really want the Raptor. Like, I think that it looks so good. Like, it's so cool. So it'd be fun to have that mini. It would also be fun to have the mushroom guy. So they look really good. Like, I haven't
really good art.
I haven't seen, because sometimes the 3D renders look really good and you get the physical product and you're like, and I haven't seen complaints about the physical product from MCDM yet, but the designs are amazing. So
I don't know if pictures of the mini, so it looks
Do they do print files as well?
That would be cool too for all of those that have the
I'd be more inclined to buy a print file, because then I could have like all of them for a lot cheaper. But many friends with 3D printers, it's great. And they're all like chomping at the bit to print stuff because they just want to play with their new toy. So I'm like, well, hey, I've got I'll print those. That sounds great.
Whatever
it is. Cool. Love it. Thank you.
So very cool. So check that out. There wasn't too much on the D&D channel. I did notice. Did you watch any of the PAX Ac Inc. game?
I didn't. I
watched a little bit of it.
I had a really full weekend of we went kayaking. Like we went to this like blue, clear, crystal clear water, like hidden kayak zone. And so, hey, no barking. We got a new puppy. So I've been busy. We did a lot of stuff. So I missed all of PAX, but they actually did an acting game then, did they?
They did, and Jeremy was back, and see, I hadn't figured out what had happened in the last game, but putting it together as I was watching the first one, chat can correct me for those of you that are super fans and know. I think what happened is the game before this one, Jeremy must not have been able to make it, so they kind of did like a little interlude, kind of one-off. They went to they had to go to Modron, or they had to go to Sigil, I think, and deal with Modrons, because the Modrons had come to them and said, everything's messed up, time is not working because of this. And they go there, and right now it was, all these Modrons are trying to put a Band-Aid on how time works by moving time around, but it's slowed everything down. And so they brought the character group in to try to fix that. And then Jeremy was back. So then he was able to say, okay, that whole adventure had happened, and now you're back to where we were, back on the top of the tower, and they're like the prison. They were in a prison. They were doing a prison escape kind of thing. And it's got all the, the fun characters and the humor that you have from an Aki game. They always have just the really funny table banter that I love in those games. So I always like to go back and watch those. I think they have to fight their clones. They were about to fight their clones that they were going to have to go after. And so it looked pretty good. I haven't watched the whole thing, but I did get to see some of it, and it was pretty good.
No, that's I'm just looking at, I went to acking.com, and the last one they have is in May. They did Chris Straub DM'd a game for PAX East. So I imagine the PAX West game will be popped up here shortly, but almost went to PAX West. I was this close.
Yeah. And what made me really think of it too is, they're doing Modrons, you're doing Modrons.
Yeah.
I thought, well, you might want to go back and take a look at that one to see how they did it. Because it was, Chris Straub is super funny, but it's like that super dry humor, straight face humor that he can do, that, a style of humor that's just not everybody gets, but man, it cracks
where you don't laugh at yourself. Like I have the problem where I'm like, I just said something funny. Yeah. But those people that can just deadpan, like, no.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Full deadpan, and just being able to deliver dialogue like on point, like it was with no stumbles. It was so good. So you might go back and check that out, because I thought it was a pretty funny little thing, that because they did a recap in the beginning of this one, and it made me super interested to go back and watch the other one. But so I like those games. I think they're fun. I love that crew. I love watching Jeremy Dungeon Master. I think Chris would be great Dungeon Mastering. I should go back and watch that one. I like it when Jerry Dungeon Masters too. Jerry Holken's stuff is really good. The whole team, the whole group, and they've got the cool characters over there, and they always have the funny Lathander jokes, and I just think it's a whole pretty good show. So check it out when you get
check it out.
Check it out. I was also super excited. It's getting close. I saw some cards get revealed for Magic the Gathering, the Warhammer 40K set that's coming out.
So Lucian.
Yes.
For those of us who don't know, because I know all about it, but like for people who don't, what is Warhammer 40K and why should I care about it?
Yes. So Warhammer 40K is what I would consider, they call it the grimdark future, 40,000 years into the future, built by a company in England. So it's kind of based off of that World War II, big super great wars kind of thing. Lots of factions, lots of history, lots of books written by really good authors have built this world. It's a tabletop war game that's expanded to large battles, epic battles, small battles, role-playing games, video games, mobile games, every type of game you can, board games, everything you can think of. And it's the Warhammer world in that 40,000 year future. So you have things like the Tyranid Swarm, which are your bugs, and you have the Chaos with all of these really cool demons and things. And then you've got, all kinds of alien races and space elves and the Space Marines, one of the most popular things you could ever
40K
possibly.
Space Marines. That's what I always think of. Yeah.
Space Marines, and then you've got the humanities on the edge, and there's all kinds of stuff going on with it. Huge. And they also had a fantasy world Warhammer, which was for their tabletop game, but they also made board games and big battle games and small skirmish games, and then role-playing games, TTRPG style games with that too. And I would say in the 80s and 90s, they were probably the competitor to Wizards of the Coast as far as big companies with big fan bases for this fantasy worlds and being able to play, these types of games, because really Lord of the Rings, nobody was pushing Lord of the Rings. They were selling their license to other people, but they weren't pushing their thing. So you had Wizards of the Coast doing their Forgotten Realms and their stuff during the 80s and 90s, and you had, it was White Dwarf and the company, I'm forgetting the name of it.
White Wolf?
White, no, nope. Chad will know. But the White Dwarf was the magazine they put out. I'm forgetting the name of the company that builds it. But they were like the two juggernauts of this fantasy thing. And I think they just have really big fan bases that are fanatical about their stuff. And I was crazy excited to see that they were going to have a crossover. I just had, this seemed insane to me. To see cards and artwork and see how this game is going to play. But it is a commander deck set, so I didn't want to mention that to people who I might be also hyping up and getting excited. Make sure you check your prices on that. Games Workshop, that's it. Because these commander decks seem pretty expensive. Have you been playing any of the commander deck Magic the Gathering? You're a Magic the Gathering guy. So...
Oh, now? Yeah, no. No, I haven't. I bought one commander deck because it was the Forgotten Realms one, and I thought it would be kind of fun. But I haven't. I never actually got to play it.
Right. And I think most commander games that I've seen are 4-player games, right?
I think they're all 4-player games, yeah.
So I was having trouble trying to find another person to play Magic, let alone go find 3 people who are playing Magic. So I don't know what I'm going to do here. I don't know if the game stores are running, commander deck tournaments. I might have to check into that. And I don't know if the online game that we kind of have been playing, Magic the Gathering Arena, do they have a commander deck mode?
I do not. It's so, which is weird, but I wonder if it's because, well, it's not competitive like it is with regular Magic. But it doesn't have that competitive scene, I guess. But no, I thought it was weird that they don't have a commander version for Magic the Gathering Arena, considering they have all of the other versions or something. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm excited about this one. What I've seen so far is some of the commanders you might be able to pick from. And again, they're pricey, so be careful. I'm not telling you to go run right out and buy them like I'm gonna. Don't do what Lucian does. But there is a Tyranid deck. There's a Chaos deck. There's a Necrons, which are like the Terminators of, the future, the robots that have gone crazy and want to kill everything. And then there's the Imperium of Man deck. So there is lots to choose from. The artwork looked fantastic. I saw a lot of, I get a lot of people I follow on YouTube also for Warhammer, because I like to see the tabletop game. So I have a lot of channels that I've saved, and even they're showing cards for the first time so they're kind of, that community's kind of gotten a little bit excited about Magic the Gathering, which I've never seen on their channels, right? So it must be, I think, a pretty good idea for them to do this crossover, because I think they're reaching people that don't normally. For me.
Like, I didn't care about Magic, but all of a sudden I had all these D&D cards, and I thought it was really fun. So I'm really sad that out of standard, the D&D cards have rotated out now, and I was like, oh, well,
yeah.
All my cool decks I made don't play on Magic the Gathering Arena anymore. I was all sad.
Right. So I thought that was interesting. October 7th is that release date, so we're not too far off. I'm going to be excited. I'm going to go buy probably a Tyranid commander deck, because when I built my Warhammer 40k army, I bought Tyranids, and I love the bugs, and I love this idea of the hive and all that stuff. It was pretty cool. So not that I will get to play them, because I brought our commander decks to Gen Con, and I didn't find a place to play, 3 other players to play commanders, so I'll have to try to look harder for a place to play some commander gameplay, because I've got this cool, like you said, Forgotten Realms commander deck that I bought that I was like, oh, this could be fun to play. Haven't got a chance to put it out there yet, so
for sure. Yeah, I like the idea of commander, and I watched a couple of videos on it, and it seems really cool. But yeah, you do need 3 other players, but I love the idea that it's a 100-card deck. And no 2 cards can be the same. Every card has to be a unique card, except basic lands, I guess. But that really sparked it for me, because I was like, what? Like, that makes it so you have a 1 in 100 chance of getting that synergy you want, because a lot of times I play online and they're like, oh yeah, I'll just search my deck for this card, and like, I don't know. It always seems like it hinges on, you build a deck around getting those 3 cards you need to win. And I'm like, Kickstarters are going crazy. What's going on in the world of Kickstarters, Lucian?
Well, we talked a little bit last week, because the Weird kind of had dropped. That one's on Backerkit, but when we say Kickstarter, we
say just mean crowdfunding, I guess is what we should say. But when I say Kickstarter, there's a lot of... I really am just considering...
And all of these are Kickstarter, except the Weird. The Weird was the only one, and that's Bonnie Cook Games has put out theirs, called The Weird, on Backerkit. Backerkit is running their beta site for being able to run campaigns like this, crowdfunding campaigns on their own, because normally they were a part of a Kickstarter campaign at the end of it. And so we're big, Monty Cook fans. We talked about that one, and I took a look at it, and it's doing really good. Definitely funded. They're already hitting some stretch goals. And the weird was, I just love some of the stuff they do.
It's weird because it might be doing better if it was on Kickstarter, but I know there's been a push to like, hey guys, we don't have to rely on Kickstarter. Like, there's other ways to do it, but to get people signed up are kind of hard. But I will say that they're at 280,000, which is with 20 days left to go. So they're doing really well for and the weird is system neutral. It's just a way to introduce weird concepts. It's a lot of fun roll tables. I think it's going to be useful if you're into weird. If you're into Monty Cook weird like Jordan is, this is going to be a really great one.
That's what I thought too. This is a Jordan campaign for sure.
I'm excited to introduce like invisible sun elements to any game that I run. Yeah. So
anybody that runs a Thursday night stream of the Pungeon Quest prep, so is going to like the weird Kickstarter or Backerkit. So that was out there. We know Kobold Press has put theirs out there called the Waste of Chaos, which is a 5e campaign world they're working on. Looks really cool. Looks very interesting. So when I was looking at that, then all of a sudden a bunch of these other ones were popping up.
How similar do you think that is to the dungeon? The Web DMs Weird Wastelands?
I wonder too, but it's Kobold Press, so I mean,
they're very different. But it's just like, is it like? I wonder if they both decided to. Well, WebDM did it first, but it's like, here's our magical apocalypse setting, and then I saw this and I was like, it just felt very similar. But
I think so too. I think that would be in the vein of the same thing. And just like we have Spelljammer kind of launched. And we're looking for more content. You were talking about, some of the other content that's out there. I saw a couple of these other ones out there that have now hit Kickstarter, like Waystar is kind of a sci-fi space, but it's 5e rules conversion. Then another one I thought that was much more interesting as far as for a Spelljammer game was one called Starlight Arcana, and it's basically a 5e astral plane kind of campaign with lots of subclasses, lots of new spells, lots of astral magic items, and a whole campaign world around that too. So I thought that one was a very cool. Look that one up if you're looking for something to add to maybe to your Spelljammer games.
Oh wow, that does look really cool.
See, and the artwork looks really good.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the 5e Galaxy.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
So good taglines in there, some good artwork. They do have a free PDF, so you can go look at kind of some of the work you're going to get. It also sounds like most of it's been written. And what they're using this Kickstarter for, if it's the same one I read, because I read like 10 of these this morning over the week.
Oh, it's Europe too. They're doing
European, and they had most of it written. The Kickstarter is just to get it out there, not to say, hey, we're going to work on this over the next year and a half, and that's when you'll get it. So
and to probably buy art,
like things like that.
But I like it when like the mechanics are done. They're just like, we just need the money to get it. Like to get the art and to get it out there.
Edited, physical books, possibly, those kinds of things. Another great company that we love, or I buy all their stuff, Free League, who's put out a bunch of games that I've purchased. They are doing Dragonbane, which is a remake of, or a redistributed, I think they're redoing it.
It's like a
their version of a Dungeons and Dragons game, but it was from the 70s when they were trying to make their own Dungeons and Dragons kind of game, not using TSR's game at that point. So Dragonbane is out in Kickstarter. You can jump on that one. It looks very good. Free League always puts out quality.
What's it called? Drakar Akdemenor?
Yeah,
was the original game. Yeah. And which was an original Scandinavian tabletop game. And they say reimagined, but what I think they've done is they've gotten new art and they basically cleaned up the rules, kind of like what Old School Essentials did with BX D&D, I think. But they can't call it that in America because it's too close to something else. So it's called Dragonbane for English. I don't know anything about it. Originally launched in 1982. But it looks cool. And you're right, Free League does amazing stuff. Like I really have I've backed a lot of Free League stuff, specifically for Forbidden Lands, because I like that game a lot. But yeah.
Well, and we were talking off show last week where we were saying a cool idea would be exploring other tabletop games that were coming out back in the 70s and 80s that were not Dungeons and Dragons, but were that countries of origins idea of, we've heard of this thing, we kind of get the concept, we're going to build something like it too, but what are our influences and what are our rules that we come up with? So like if you know, if there was a company in Japan that had heard about Dungeons and Dragons, they're like, well, we're going to make one, not a conversion of Dungeons and Dragons itself, but they're like, we're going to make our own. What would that look like?
Yeah.
What was the Scandinavian tabletop role-playing game look like? What is the Swedish, what is the, what is the Russian or the East,
and to take
European.
Rather than saying we want to take like Anglo-Saxon European kind of King Arthur Tolkien mythology and make a D&D game around that, like what do elves, because elves before Tolkien were not angelic wonderful beings, they were mischievous, awful, fey creatures. And so to take that, like, it just makes, I don't know, I would love to see that.
Like the old German fairy tales.
The German D&D was called Dark Eye. And so not for those fairy tales. And I feel like Vaesen does a really good job of that with Free League, where it is like, here's our like mythology,
it's like the non-token
running after trolls, but they're very much like Swedish mythological trolls as opposed to Tolkien trolls and stuff, you know,
or what they become in D&D, and then everybody's kind of using, like the orcs are very similar once you get past the 80s in most people's games. They're very similar type of thing with minor variations, but you could find an orc in a Japanese mythology that could be a very different thing. Like, completely different.
What would Japanese, a true Japanese tabletop RPG game, not like, because I know that they're pushing Tolkien. 5e into that, but like to not have like, well, fireball, like, Chinese. Well, I don't cast fireballs, I do this,
Indian.
Oh man,
there
Native
could be
American
all kinds
so
of
cool. Indian would be really cool.
Turkey, that like kind of Morocco, like that Middle Eastern area with their mythologies and creatures and stuff. So that was what I thought was interesting, and that's why I wanted to bring Dragonbane up, because it was in that frame of idea that we were talking about of trying a game that was based not on something that was inspired by like a Tolkien or Dungeons and Dragons of the 80s. So I thought that was cool. And
actually, to piggyback on that, so there's a company out of Turkey that sponsored one of my videos recently.
Yeah, we were talking. That's what
that's kind of because so Historica Arcanum, they're doing a new Kickstarter right now called Empires of the Silk Road. They haven't sponsored this segment at all, but I only talk about things that I really like. So I really like this. They sent me their original book, which was the Crescent City. And it had some really awesome stuff. So it's made by people in Turkey about a alternate history, Istanbul. Like, if magic existed at this point, how would have that entire city have changed? And so it's this fictional world, but like, man, I was thinking about, I like Al-Qadim. I like I like a lot of that Middle Eastern stuff. And so this just seems like it would fit into that style of game. Or if you do need that kind of otherworldly city, that works. But Empires of the Silk Road, I'm on the fence whether I want to get it, because it's kind of expensive, but like, because I told myself that if I do it, I want the $200 collector set, because it's really cool. But I would 100% check out Empires of the Silk Road. If the art is amazing, and it's people writing a book who really love what they're building. They're not building it to be like, well, this will sell. They're building it because like they have a passion for these stories, and it's awesome. So,
and then the last one I was going to mention, that it was one that the artwork immediately caught my eye, was the World of Kensei 5e art campaign world that's being built. And the artwork just captured me. I was like, this looks really cool and fun and interesting. It's going to have subclasses. It's going to have, everything that you could need for a 5e kind of campaign world to run. And really evocative art, really, samurai inspired, kind of, that feudal China,
like,
feudal Korea,
yeah, but with
kind of
monsters.
that,
like the Oni
really
running
cool.
around.
Yeah, the red Oni looked really, really cool, and so I thought it looked really neat. That's probably what I'm gonna back after today's show. I'm gonna hit the button on that one. I'm maybe thinking about the Starlight Arcana because I think that one looked really good. There's just so many, you know, I have at least 10 I'm still waiting for to come in at this point. So I'm just a Kickstarter person. I liked them. I saw you did I did see these other two you threw on there, but tell me why they piqued your interest, because I could tell when you wrote them on there, we're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, Jordan.
Yeah, so well, I threw on his Empires of the Silk Road, but this one I just feel is getting a lot of press. It's only got, well, maybe not a lot of press because they're not at 100K yet, but and they got 4 days to go. But Dr. Grordborts' Scientific Adventure Violence. Yeah, this one is just kind of one of those like 5e worlds that reminds me of like Deadlands, I guess, kind of, where it's this weird take on a very unique world that I would like to play in. So it's kind of, this is like a mixture of like the Wild West steampunk and just robots and stuff. But yeah, I don't know much about this, but the art again totally captured me, and it looks like it's 5e compatible, but yeah, like laser guns and robots, and they have a whole section here on rocket fighters, so you could be like the Rocketeer kind of, it felt like that. Flash Gordon, very like really weird tanks and stuff. So if you like those retro sci-fi kind of worlds, this could be a really interesting thing. But Dr. Grordborts' Scientific Adventure Violence, a role-playing game supplement. So it looks cool. And yeah, it's got 4 days to go, so you could definitely check that out.
And it is a 5e supplement too.
Yep.
I think almost all these ones we talked about.
All these are 5e, yeah. So they're
5e.
all D&D. Well, the weird is system neutral, but yeah. And Dragonbane is its own game. We should say that.
Yeah.
No, and the other one that was kind of cool is Lord of Aetherra, Dark Symmetry. So when we were at Gen Con, I think we were just walking by and we're like, excuse me, what? Like, it looked really cool, just the cover alone. They are coming out with, if in the Kickstarter, they've got a record. I guess records are the new thing with tabletop role-playing games too. Like, we'll do like a soundtrack, because I know Colville's been playing around with the idea of a soundtrack. And then we got the Spelljammer soundtrack, and there's a couple of other RPGs that I've been doing like cassette tapes, or to kind of get like a mood, like a feel. And actually, Historica Arcanum has MP3s as well, to be like, here's a soundtrack to the game, which is kind of cool. But Lore of Aetherra is another setting with crafting rules, new subclasses and stuff. I feel like they do subclasses just because it sells, but it'll sell that way is what I should say. But it's like a weird underwater kind of setting. I'm not really sure. But again, the art is really cool. This is a terrible pitch where we're just like, yeah, I don't know, it looks cool, but like I don't know anything about it other than we were flipping through it and I was really blown away by how complete this world felt for that. And I think that's kind of the future for me of Dungeons and Dragons is as the Forgotten Realms gets bloated with more options available for everybody, because it's like this encompassing thing where you can have everything in it. I really want to play an Eberron, or I want to play a Historica Arcanum, where I'm like, we're going to limit to these subclasses. Like, I like that idea as I'm running new games. So,
and this was one that partnered with another tabletop VTT, which was really trying to make a splash. And I think it was the other reason that we kind of stopped in, because they had their big screens up and they were showing how you could run this game, and the way that the
Alchemy,
that's
the VTT.
Alchemy had partnered with them, and so they had a very cool looking presentation. The artwork was top notch. It looked like you could run a really evocative game. They had some really cool ideas that they were going to be bringing in the future. They've got the main system up right now. You can go to their website and kind of use some of it. And Aether is already on there. You can get some of this campaign world already, and Dark Symmetry is another part of it. And then they're also going to be adding, and they've been talking about also adding features that make it so that streamers might be interested in using this as their VTT during their streamed games, which was one of the reasons I'm on their Discord, and I'm kind of keeping an eye on the stuff that's coming out over there. And I've actually jumped on and tried to create, a couple of campaign worlds and stuff and see how it works. It's pretty good. I like it. It's not as robust, I think, as Roll20 yet, but they have like the base that I think is really good and a plan to really kind of push it. That seems like something to keep
unlike
an eye on.
Roll20, it looks like they focused more on presentation
Yes.
for streamers. Like,
Yes.
this is interesting to watch and your players get immersed. And there's like, when you transition to the bar or to the tavern, it like does a new splash page and you can hear the crowd in the background. Like a lot of
animated
cool,
background
and so,
stuff. Yeah.
Yes, I'll say like the rules aren't 100% there like they are for a Roll20 or a D&D Beyond, but they didn't focus on that first. They really wanted to be like, you could use those on the side. This is more of like for the presentation aspect of it. And it looks beautiful. Like it looks really cool. So.
And the art that they've chosen is really good. So you should go out to their website and check it out. Look them up. They were really cool. I'm tracking them on Twitter too to keep an eye on updates. Just like I was doing with Nexus, because Nexus is that other VTT that I'm super interested in and seeing where it goes and what games they bring to their table. Just like, we've got D&D Beyond, but I love to see some other big competitors out there that are going to, Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds and some of these other ones that people use. But
so
I love to see new technology.
I backed the Weird because I'm very excited and I like Monte Cook games. But that's the only one of these that I've backed so far. What are you super interested in that you're thinking you want to grab?
So it's definitely, I think when I'm done, I'm pushing the button for the World of Kensei because I like the thing. I'm definitely getting Dragonbane Free League because I buy everything Free League.
Okay.
Anyways, then I'm on the fence between Starlight Arcana or Wastes of Chaos from Kobold Press because I love Kobold Press stuff too.
Well, Kobold Press will be out in their store.
You'll be able to buy it so I could go to Gen Con next year and pick it up too.
Exactly. And I don't want to like they do Kickstarters because that's their business model. They have to. The same with the Weird. Like the Weird will be available on their store for a long time, Monte Cook Games, but some of these other ones like
come and go.
Yeah, and for a while Forbidden Lands was pushing like $200 or $300 for me to get a copy because they were just out of print. And they're like, oh yeah, unless we do another Kickstarter run. So sometimes you have to like, what? I don't want to spend $300 for this, but it's the only way to get a physical copy. And then shortly after they started another run, and that's how I was able to get my copy for not like $1 kajillion. But so some of these like Lord of Aetherra or Historica Arcanum, this might be the time that you can get it,
Exactly.
And I don't know about Starlight Arcana or Waystar, but who knows? So.
Yeah, and I think if I was going to be running or had plans to do a Spelljammer campaign like pretty soon, like, in a month I'm going to run Spelljammer, I would be leaning more towards maybe the Waystar and the Starlight Arcana. But they both look pretty cool to me. They look very interesting. I always like a 5e conversion because, it's just fun to be able to play in a system you already basically know if they haven't changed
You're familiar
it too much.
with,
So. And you can just, and it's easier to teach other people if you do convince some people to play it. You're going to be able to teach them how to play it pretty easy. Then I have to teach them and myself. Like when we did Invisible Sun, you have to teach yourself and you have to teach your players who are trying to play the game. So that's difficult. A little bit tougher. So those are the ones I'm interested in. I still, sometimes I get them all, Jordan, and my wallet burns.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to slow down on Kickstarters.
But man, we got Planebreaker recently. We got Planebreaker.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like I haven't even sat down and really read Planebreaker, and so I'm like, I want to utilize.
I'm 3 chapters in. That's so good.
Yeah, I want to utilize the books that I have, because I was rereading Arcana of the Ancients. When I was thinking about Eberron and playing, basically, how can I play Eberron using Numenera is what I was thinking of. So I don't know, but and with the Great Modron March, I'm really focused on planner stuff right now. So I'm looking at a lot of the things that I already have to influence that game, and I don't necessarily think I need to jump on Lord of Aetherra because by the time it comes out, I will be unable to.
You will be able to get that on their site.
You know,
Yeah.
I will be.
You'll
done
be able to
with
buy it at the
what I'm
VTT
doing.
site for there too, because they will sell that.
So yeah.
Very cool.
But yeah, so I guess I'll just talk about my games really quick because I am curious about what you're doing with your stuff.
I was wondering if that'd catch your eye.
But Great Motor on March started. We didn't do so much of a planner adventure or a Great Motor on March as the first adventure was a silly way for me to get them out of Sigil and into the actual adventure that we're going to run. But it was a lot of fun. I did the Pungeon quest, which I've talked about before, which is just I played it with my DCC group. This is what I wanted to play at Gen Con, but we didn't get to. Mm-hmm. So I put it into here where they had to navigate the Pungeon in order to finally escape Sigil.
And how did they like it? Because that's what I was wondering.
They did.
I know you love this stuff. How was your group? Did they?
It was funny because all of the characters decided that they hated puns. So everyone was like rolling their eyes and stuff. But midway through the game, I was like, "Are you guys having fun?" They're like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And then afterwards, they were like, "This is hilarious!" Like they loved it. So they had a good time. It was kind of a rocky start just because I think we all forgot how to stream. But it will be available on Nerd Immersion Plays YouTube channel and on my Patreon as a podcast. So you can catch up. And we're going to do this every Thursday. We're going to keep running it. So I'm going to be doing a prep maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow night. But sometime. I got to work on a video today, I think, for the next prep, and it's going to be the start of the March, and they're going to have millions of Modrons rushing out of Mechanus, and they're going to have to be like, well, what do we do? And I'm like, that's the game, I guess. Did my Black Company Artificer game 2 weeks ago, but we didn't really get to talk about it. A lot of fun there, running around. I think we're going to level up soon, which will be exciting, because I will be able to cast Haste, which I'm waiting for. But we are in a vampire tower, and we're playing tomorrow, so I'm excited to see where this is going to go in this vampire tower that we're running around in. That's got like spindly fingers as legs.
Oh, that's
it's
right.
Like walking around. So,
Yes.
but yeah, what are you doing in the world of tabletop?
Well, yeah, so we have our Tuesday night game, but one of our friends was coming back from a mountain climb over in Washington. So when I say that, for the Americans on the West Coast, probably understand that that's a significant type thing to do over there because the mountains are big. He was flying back on, I think it was Monday night, so he didn't really want to play on Tuesday, and then so the game got postponed. So I had said, well, I'm going to be on at that same time anyways, because I marked that off on my calendar not to do anything but play tabletop games. And I said, I'm going to be there if anybody wants to build some Pathfinder 2 characters. And so a few of the players from that game jumped on, and we went through over a couple hour session of building out 3 different Pathfinder 2E characters using just the base book, the very first book, which is the core rule book. You will find very quickly that Pathfinder, in all of the stuff they put out, add lots and lots more options. So it can definitely get a lot more, I don't want to say complicated, but a lot more choices to be made as you start looking at some of the more supplements.
Right.
But even this comes out with just some really good choices and options in it. And, a couple of goblins, a dwarf was created, and we went through the process, and now I feel like I know how to create a basic level 1 Pathfinder 2E character from the book, put it out on the character sheet. We did use Roll20, and the Roll20 character sheet, once you kind of figured out its little nuances, did seem to help the process along with math and things like that, and changing the cogs to make sure things work. So that was good, and I think we had a great time learning the process. And it is it's a little bit different than Dungeons and Dragons in the way it approaches some of those things. And the players came away from it really impressed with some of the things that you can do in there, especially where you get your bonuses, how you get your skill opportunities and things, because a lot of times it's coming from either your heritage or it's coming from your class or your background and those different things, but done in a different way than what you're used to in 5e. And here's something I didn't even know. You don't even roll for your stats.
Really? Okay.
All of your stats in Pathfinder 2e start at 10, And then, depending on what you're choosing as you go through the rest of the process, those are going to move based on the choices you're making for your heritage, your background, your class, and so on. And that's going to give you your stats that you're going to run with. So that was an interesting thing. Now, I will say, for those of you that are Pathfinder experts in chat going, Lucian, you're wrong, that is how the base game plays. They do have in the advanced Dungeon Master's Guide that they put out the alternate rules. So you can do point buy. They have alternate rules if you want to do point buy. There's other ways you can do stuff. But that's not how the base game was written. Like, so if you're going to play it as Pathfinder 2e was written, that's what we did that night. And that's what I told the players to try to focus on, because I just wanted to get a good example of how would this be if we did a character creation session. What are the types of questions we would have? What would confuse us as we were going through it? And we found we were able to really figure out almost everything. Something would pop up that we'd go, how does this kind of work? We'd flip a page or two, we'd look it up, and then all of a sudden we'd have it. It explained it pretty well, and we'd be able to move on, and I think we were all pretty successful. I feel like a much better experience than I had when I did Starfinder. I felt Starfinder, I left character creation still with some unknowns, and like, I don't think this is right. Is that what the number should be, or is that how many of those things I should have? Or like, I was still confused no matter how many pages I read. This one, it feels like they really tightened up their process. The editing went through and did a better job of putting it together, and I was pleasantly surprised on creating characters in Pathfinder 2e is pretty good and pretty fun. So my next hope is that I could maybe convince Jordan and Lex on a night where they're not doing anything, which is probably impossible, to do a second test, same thing, and just see how, a couple of different people coming from a couple of different view lines of character generation, and you
I'll
guys
ask
actually look at
questions, and you'll get
mechanics a little more too, and stuff.
That's cool.
How things are done, to say, okay, let's go through it, see how it works, and then what'd you think of it? What'd you like about it? What was interesting? What didn't you like? Those kinds of things. Your hit points are set, and you're not rolling those, so they take that kind of piece out of that too. So there's some differences in there that are very interesting, and now I'm curious. We also might do a test here pretty soon if a game gets canceled on a Tuesday night, where we test out how a combat would run, and we might test how like a skill challenge kind of thing, where you're doing maybe like a chase through the city market, where you're maybe trying to use lots of skills to do something, which you would do in any game. It doesn't matter really what game you're playing. You come across combat, and you have to kind of know how that's going to work. How are challenges going to work when it's not combat related, but they're doing things that are not certain? How is that going to work?
When your player says, can I swing off the chandelier? You're like, roll this, I guess. So so to just see how that feels, how easy we're able to get to those rules, and then say, hey. Then I was looking at Roll20 to see what campaigns I could buy for Pathfinder, and there's a couple of them on there for Pathfinder 2e that maybe I could run one of the standard campaign world that they put out, one of their adventure paths or whatever. So, that'd be fun.
Very interesting. I every time I read more in these books from Pathfinder, I'm more and more intrigued and want to keep going. I haven't reached a point where I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna go look for something else at this point. It's like each time I read something else, and I'm like, oh, now I want to know more.
But that's cool.
Yeah, so it's really good. And it's been really fun experience. And I am definitely not we talked a little bit about this. I know we're running over that. There's the group of Pathfinder community that like to rub Dungeons and Dragons in the dirt a little bit, or I told you so, you should be playing our game and not that game because of this or that. I'm not coming from that. I love D&D. I love 5e. I love playing 5e. I think it's a great system.
I think the majority of it is not the loud, angry people, but I agree. Yeah,
Pathfinder 2e is really impressive.
It's good.
Me
I
from
think
somebody
it's a
who
good
likes
game.
D&D.
I think if you like a lot of people are intimidated by the crunch, probably myself as well. But there's a strong part of me that loves character builds. Like if you stare at Magic the Gathering cards trying to find synergy, there's no difference than staring at your character sheet and if I level up, but if I take this spell, that's fun for a lot of people. So yeah.
So very interesting. I think it'd be a cool conversation to compare the two. Based on, we've talked about this before, and I was kind of starting to put a video together, but then the whole kind of scene got flooded with everybody doing comparisons, so I kind of thought, I'll sit back and let it cool down. But I thought it'd be cool to say, just the Player's Handbook, you build a character just from Player's Handbook 5e, none of the supplements, none of the extra stuff, compare that to Pathfinder 2e, none of the supplements, just the book, just the main one, first book that you use, and just go through and not compare them as one's better or not, but just to see the differences and the choices they made, and to think about, oh, what does that mean because they made this choice? I'll give you an example. Like the races the heritages they put in the game for Pathfinder, they had to make a choice, right? Because they know they have all these ones that they created in Pathfinder 1, so it's not like they didn't have these already known or whatever, but they had to choose which ones go in the main book is just people only buy this book. They don't have any of the supplements. What are we going to give them here? And in here we had things like, the goblins there, the dwarfs there, the elves there. Of the races in Pathfinder that you can start with 2e that I thought was interesting, 4 of them are under 3 foot tall, and only 2 of them are above that. Elf and human. The rest are small, dwarf, halfling, gnome, goblin. So 4 that are small, 2 that are thing, and those are your base kind of starting heritages that you can choose from. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
Or just like goblins being a core race is
that's a
very
choice,
different,
right? They say
from D&D,
huge core choice. Yeah. So I thought that was fun, and they obviously have all the other races out there. Don't get me wrong. There's so many supplemental different races you can play, so don't feel like you're confined if you don't have those.
But yeah, my point is like the goblin isn't in the PHB. Right. As a player race, that came later and things like that. But the tiefling is like, why is the tiefling but not a goblin? So.
Right. So D&D chose the tiefling, right? Yeah. I thought that was cool. Well, what about the classes? So they choose what classes that are going to be our first ones, right? The only ones that we're going to do. So we get all the same ones that kind of Dungeons and Dragons chose for their 5e. The difference being no paladin in second edition. They call theirs the champion. They switch it up a little bit different. So it is still kind of like a paladin, but they flavor it differently. So there's a design choice there. And then the only other one...
Freddie Mercury style. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah. The only other one that's in here that you might seem different would be the Alchemist is one of the starting classes that you would do. And, you have a lot of them. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 possible starting classes in your book. You only buy one book. You have 12 to choose from, 6 heritages just to get you started. And it's amazing. I just thought it was kind of a cool thing to look at, which ones they included, which ones they didn't include. So 5e has the Warlock, which we don't really have here, but we have the Alchemist here. So it's just a slight difference. Now, there is Warlock-like creatures, classes later on, but just in this base, Monk, Fighter, Druid, Cleric, Wizard, Sorcerer, Rogue, Ranger, Champion, their Paladin, Bard, Barbarian, Alchemist. So I thought it was interesting. I just thought that was just a cool thing to look at. And there's so many supplements that you can get to add to your game. So, all right. I know we went over, but I was excited. It made me excited.
How dare you, sir?
It's good. I mean, I'm surprised. I keep thinking that I'm going to run across something I don't like.
They're just like, oh, Lucian playing PF or Pathfinder 2.
You should see all the people talking to me on Twitter all of a sudden, too. Like, I have a million Twitter friends all of a sudden because I've been talking about Pathfinder stuff, too. So there's a big community out there that really loves this game.
Yeah, it's true.
So
that's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing, for your support both on this channel and on Patreon and what have you. We really value you guys. This has been a fun, like 3-4 years in of a show that we're doing.
It's getting there,
great.
isn't it? Episode 220.
Yeah, 220 episodes. It's awesome. So thank you guys so much. We will be back next week with another episode of Saturday Morning D&D Show. Take care.
Bye.